From Australia, the land down under, for Revolution Radio on revolution.radio. We are home to ideas that are fresh and uncensored, maybe slightly pickled in some cases. Certainly always good conversations in the chat room, so if you can get there, please do. If you're listening to this live and not canned, make your way to the chat. It's always good fun, and we usually drop a few things in there as well. Now, the station is not actually beholden to anyone. No puppet masters pulling the strings, or at least not for Dave and I can tell you. Well, at least for me, I can tell you. There's no strings being pulled anywhere in any direction. But of course, it means there's no money coming in other than from you, the good listeners. And if you feel so inclined, please donate. Any kind of currency, including crypto, is fine. If you can't donate, that's okay. Hey, that's okay. And maybe you can tell people about the show. They can donate on your behalf. That would be awesome. Today is, in fact, the 14th of November, 2023.
True.
2023. You can catch the cave on the air, on the line, and onto your smart device. So grab an app to listen anywhere or listen at home on a great tabletop digital radio. I will buy myself one of those. I will. I'm going to have one because I've been talking about this thing for 12 years. I'm going to buy
That's what
myself.
I told them.
Right?
Yeah. I sent them an email the other day.
And good luck with that. Now, what's really good, and should encourage you to donate even more fervently, is that the archives are free. Completely free, gratis, umsonst, nix, nada. No upfront or after payments. Just go and enjoy the archives if you feel like that. Before we start broadcasting at you in anger, we would like to acknowledge the traditional custodians of the land here in Australia from which we broadcast.
For me, I'm broadcasting out of Darkinjung country.
Sir, and I, of course, broadcast to you from the land of the good, the Rock people. And we would like to pay our respects to elders, past, present, and future. The spin doctors are working overtime, Dave. The spin doctors are going nuts. Let me put it this way. We actually can hold more than one idea in our brain, even if they're opposing ideas, and we're not going to go insane. Just we can. It's a thing we can do. So I'm a little dismayed that we're seeing all these protests now, right? There's protests for Israel. There's protests for the Palestinians.
Yeah.
There's protests against Israel. There are protests against Israel, against the Palestinians. Mm-hmm. And the thing is this. It reminds me of the Black Lives Matter movement. I'll tell you why. So Black Lives Matter came on the heel of the unfortunate demise of George Floyd. We can all remember that, I'm sure. Mm-hmm. It's quite horrendous. But it sparked a movement, Black Lives Matter. And then people would come and say, no, all lives matter. Well, you can't really argue that. Yes, that is true. That is a truth. Right? But
did anyone like you saying that?
Well, no, but the other thing is also, but the thing is this, right? The reason that Black Lives Matter gained such momentum, and the reason for its relevance is because in a great number of nations, America one, Australia another, others as well, Black lives don't matter as much as white lives. And we see it today as well. What wars are reported on, which stories make it to the news, which don't. And if you're not white, then your story has less of a chance of being told. We also know that the prison population is a lot higher proportionally to the overall population in America and in Australia of colored people. So colored people are more prevalent in the prison system. That goes for blacks, Hispanics, etc. It's the same thing in Australia. So it is a truth that Black lives seem to matter less, because we get a lot of stories of Black people, men, women, children being shot by the police for no good reason.
Mm-hmm.
That happens, not just shot, but killed in other ways, There's certainly a lot of deaths in custody here in Australia of Aboriginal people. A lot, still to this day. Hundreds. So then the movement in that frame, in that context, it made sense to say Black Lives Matter. What it should have said, to avoid any confusion for people that think all lives matter, but it should have said Black Lives Matter too.
Mm-hmm.
That's what it should have said, but it didn't, and I understand why it didn't. It's okay. But the truth is Black Lives Matter. But people treat, and this is the important distinction here, people treat Black lives, and not everybody, but a good chunk of people treat Black lives as though they don't matter.
Yeah.
And that's why this movement was important. Yes, all lives matter, but you're missing the point. If you're white, and male for that matter, and you're born somewhere in the Northern Hemisphere, you are enjoying privileges that other people in the world can only dream of.
Yeah. Clean
water, edible food, shelter, a future, as it were. And that is really the crux here. Yes, of course, all lives matter, but your life has always mattered more being a white person. I'm not hating on white people. I'm beige, I guess. I don't know, maybe off-white, beige, I don't know, whatever.
Off-white, eggshell.
Eggshell. But people look at me and say, "No, you're a white guy. You're a white guy with green eyes, brown hair, right?"
Mm-hmm.
But that's neither here nor there. And so I was privileged too. Sure, I know that, right? And maybe less privileged than some others, but I had privilege. I'm fully aware of that. But my point is, the whole movement was about raising awareness of the unlawful and unjust deaths of Black people. Full stop. Full stop. This wasn't a comparison. My life is worth more than yours, or if my life matters, then yours doesn't. This is not a zero-sum game. This is not a zero-sum game, and this is where the spin doctors come in. Your life matters, and my life matters too, and his life and her life. They all matter. Okay? Just because I say Black Lives Matter doesn't mean that your life doesn't matter. I'm just saying, hey, my life matters too here. I'm Black and my life matters. Okay? I'm a person. And that's what we're seeing now in Gaza. And so we've got 2-something million Palestinians that are caught in the crossfire, right? Between Hamas, which people acknowledge is about 25,000, maybe 30,000 members, yeah, less than 1%, okay. In fact, not even 1%, less than actually probably 0.1% of the total Gazan population. But so that's how many are there. And they committed a horrible act, Hamas. Now, the circumstances, in my opinion, are still not clear. How did they get this far? How could the Mossad not know? These are all questions that will be answered maybe at some point. And they committed a terrible crime. And you can say that because it's true. It's a true statement. Hamas committed a terrible crime. Whether or not they were allowed to do it or not doesn't matter at this point. But the crime was committed. But I think 1,400 people died. There it is, right? And now you can equally say that Israel is committing a crime in Gaza by indiscriminately bombing Palestinians and Gaza or Gazan neighborhoods, indiscriminately. More than 10,000 people have now died in Gaza. 10,000 and several thousand children. And again, we talked about this because there's just the population is very young. The Gazan population is a very young population. So both statements are true. Hamas has committed a crime, awful, and Israel is committing a crime right now as well. That is also true. It doesn't make me anti-Semitic by saying it.
No.
What it does it makes me a person that looks for justice and truth. Does Israel have a right to exist? Yes. Do the Palestinians have a right to exist? Yes. These are not mutually exclusive statements. not getting there. That's the hard bit, right? I can tell you we're not getting there by bombing each other, because all we are doing right now. Okay, so 10,000 people have died in this latest bombing of Gaza, and before that, 1,400 thereabouts Israelis have died. Now, those Israelis, they could have been Jews, they could have been Muslims, they could have been Christians. We don't know. The population of Israel is not exclusively Jewish. People forget that too.
That's
And
right.
Palestinians are not Muslim categorically. They could be Christian Palestinians, or Buddhist Palestinians, or atheist Palestinians. Yeah, this is not a religious war. This is two nationalities, or two states, if you will. In fact, not even that. It's Hamas, which is a liberation organization, if you want to call it that, a freedom fighter or terrorist, if you're Israeli, right? And Israel, the state of Israel. The state of Israel is fighting these people that are fighting against the occupation. Does Israel have a right to exist and defend itself? Yes. Do the Palestinians have a right to exist and fight an unlawful occupation? Yes. Yes, they do. Yes, they do. So, but the spin doctors turn it into a zero-sum game, Dave. That's really my point here, right? The puppet show that we see is, if you're pro-Palestinian, you can't be pro-Israel. If you're pro-Israel, you can't be pro-Palestinian. Worse, if you're pro-Jewish, you can't be pro-Palestinian.
Mm-hmm.
And pro-Jewish is now completely equated with pro-Israeli, which is wrong. It's a completely wrong statement. It's not true. It just isn't true. Israel is not an exclusively Jewish state. It just isn't. Right? But that's the spin we're getting here, and we're getting it more and more. And we are painting ourselves into a corner here. Okay? Because there's no way out. Netanyahu, in my opinion, has not long. I think he's terminally ill. That's my guess. Looking at him and the way he's acting, I think he wants to leave a legacy. I don't think he's long to live. That's my analysis. And his legacy, he wants to be, well, we've at least solved the Gaza problem. Gaza is no longer a problem for Israel. That's my legacy. There it is. Okay? And at the same time, you've got all the others. A lot more people are turning away from Israel, Dave. You might have seen this, right? The French have now joined in the chorus of stop the bombing, stop bombs. In fact, Macron said specifically, stop bombing hospitals and babies. That's pretty strong words from the French leader.
Now, most of this is coming from the media.
Of course it is.
And I'm going to make the point again. This isn't against you, Mackie, right? This is against anyone that I speak to. Anyone. Right? So, Israel, I think, wasn't it 2005? It pulled out basically of the Gaza Strip, right? It stopped managing it. Politically controlling it. Right? And then there was a gap, and was it Hamas decided to manage the Gaza Strip. And so if you'd like to look at it in one way and yourselves, then just understand, I think, that the control of the people, like a government, is the best you're going to get out of Hamas. So they didn't have a political system, and they could have created one, but they didn't, and Hamas moved in, and it is what it is. It is the thing it is now is because of that. Now, I know they've got more generations than I care to count of what was it, the Hatfields versus the McCoys style of hatred. You're just born into it. Doesn't matter which side of the fence you're on. Now, all it would take is for it's not fashionable, but have what we in the West call a democratic election. That's really funny. And just for now, for the intent of this conversation, that's what it is. And that is really what could change this about. It could turn around. It's too late, I think, to change the Palestinian state into a democratically elected government and get rid of Hamas. I mean, Hamas is in, so good luck with that.
But finish your point. There's actually something important.
So the control of the people and where they are and what they're doing is just basically a radicalist military state. That's what it is. And then they're not moving their people away. They are doing what it is that's illegal according to the conventions that we all adhere to. Well, some adhere to, and that is that you need to not protect yourself, surround yourself by civilians if you're like an army. I don't see busloads of civilians going along with the Australian army into battle or around their encampments. I don't see that. So the bombing of the hospital, the first one, the one where everyone, the media never backed down on it, but they said, it was Israel, they bombed it, but it really wasn't at all. And there was, I've seen the footage, the satellite picture, that it was only the car park that was hit by a misguided ordnance from their own side. So, look, the media plays it one way, and I think all of our medias around the world are all playing, the ambulance chasers, right? It's all about the plight of the people. But the plight of the people might be misrepresented in some cases, and also the cause and effect, who is to blame for what is going on. We just see a version of truth, if you want to call it that, in all our media. And I think, Meki, it's on purpose that we're showing the plight of the Palestinians here, because then it doesn't mean that we're specifically on side with Israel. Yeah? Because if we were doing that, we would have the growth of Hamas in all of our respective countries doing untold harm. But I think by showing the Palestinians, hardship for the people, that is actually the brake. It's pulled the brake on that happening in our countries. Mackie, back to you.
Possibly. There's a big difference though in analyzing the Gaza situation as well as the West Bank, but Gaza more than anything else. Let's look at World War II for a second, right? You had the French resistance fighting the Nazis because they were occupying France, so they were fighting them. They were hiding in churches and schools everywhere, and it was just a thing that they did because it was safe. And the Nazis would retaliate by hanging or shooting civilians a lot, or shipping them to concentration camps, as it were, right? Because they couldn't get to the resistance fighters. Vive la resistance. Now, this arguably is the same. Right? It is the same because it is an illegal occupation that Israel undertakes. You're right. They might not be controlling the politics of the Gaza Strip, but Israel does control everything else. Nothing goes inside or outside of Gaza unless Israel lets it.
Yeah.
That's why once Israel blocks it all off, it all goes south very, very fast. In fact, Gazans can't go anything unless they're going to pass to get out. They're living in a camp. They're living in a prison camp. And human nature, such as it is, cannot abide to live in a prison forever. People will form resistance. Whatever form that resistance takes, that might vary here and there. In our case, Hamas has come up trumps, sort of undermined the Fatah movement, the PLO. But then again, Yasser Arafat was assassinated apparently as well, which was a mistake, but that's neither here nor there. Now you've got Hamas as one party or one group that is taking on the fight. Before that, it was the PLO. People don't remember this, right? The Palestinian Liberation Organization gained legitimacy after the Oslo Accords in 1992. Right? There was a treaty signed, and Yasser Arafat became the leader of the Palestinians. I think the first president from memory, right? And then other things happened, and things went south again, and we are where we're today. And there's no clear authority right now. There is no clear authority that is governing the Palestinians because they're I guess they're divided amongst themselves. But that was Israel's purpose and goal to divide the Palestinians, because it's easier to find an enemy that's divided against itself. All Palestinians do not support Hamas. They don't. Right? They really don't. There's smaller groups, Islamic Jihad or whatever, they're still there, so maybe a few thousand fighters. Other groups as well. But the problem is, there is no right or wrong. There is only what is convenient for the person to believe that is committing the act. That's the only thing. Let me put it this way. I ask you this question. Tomorrow, China invades Australia, takes Sydney. Mm-hmm. Sydney is now under curfew, and all 2.5 million people in Sydney can only do what the Chinese let them do, right? And there's no, you can't go to university because that's reserved for the Chinese. Your businesses can only run within the area of Sydney. You can't go outside of Sydney. You haven't got any international representation. Your kids can't really go to school. Medical care is basic. Whatever you have inside Sydney, that's what you have, and it's sort of dwindling. If you want to leave Sydney, you have to go through Chinese-controlled checkpoints. Right? How would you feel about that?
Yeah, that's right. It's a really good point.
So this is very, very complex. There's no easy answer here, right? But what we are seeing is the elimination of the Palestinian problem in the Gaza Strip. That's what we're seeing here. That's the end game for Benjamin Netanyahu. Because I do believe that he's sick. And will Hamas be destroyed? No, Hamas will not be destroyed.
That's right.
In fact, the senior leaders of Hamas are not even in the Gaza.
Mm-hmm.
They're not there.
I believe that.
They're not there. They're sitting in Dubai or wherever they are, right? They're not in there. The senior leaders I'm talking about, right? The fighters are there. They're dying. They're killing, they're dying. It's all happening. And this is now getting to the point where it could spark a much wider conflict. That's really the problem there. If this was Yemen and the Saudis,
Yemen. Yep.
Well, if the Saudis had occupied Yemen, right, which they don't, but let's say they do, and they, put a curfew on the Yemenites and told me, oh, you can't do this, you can't do the other, nobody would care. Nobody cares. Americans wouldn't send 2 carrier groups to help the Yemenis or even the Saudis in that area.
Well, they did nothing when Saudi was bombing the hospitals and all the people. No.
Nothing. Who cares? Who cares? Literally, who cares? Other conflict, I mean, we're not living in an era that is free of war. That is just completely wrong. There has been a war, in fact, several wars every day for all of our lives. Every day of our lives, there has been a war somewhere. A war, a skirmish, a conflict, something. Every day of our lives, there has been something like this. But so what? Do we care? Africa has got dozens of conflicts. Asia still has large numbers of internal conflicts, most like Indonesia, you got the separatists. Even in Malaysia, you got separatists, right? China certainly has its own problem with the separatist movements. Spain, for crying out loud. There's a massive Catalan movement in the Barcelona area that wants to secede from Spain. Okay? The Basque region, both France and Spain. Yeah, they got the Flams and the Walloons in Belgium. There is no place on this planet. I mean, look at how quickly the Soviet Union fragmented into countries that you don't even know.
Mm-hmm.
It's like there's Slovenia, Slovakia, and I'm looking at these countries. I go, what? It's like, I've never heard of these countries in my life. And I grew up in Europe, right? They're all sort of countries that came into being either immediately after the collapse or over time. I mean, Czechoslovakia was one country, right? Now it's the Czech Republic and the Slovak Republic. All right? It's complete insanity. So there are all these countries that all of a sudden exist that didn't exist before, right? It boggles the mind, and quite a few of them are now part of the Russian Federation. You know that's all good, but the point is this: conflict has always been with us, always, and there has never been a time when there wasn't, a conflict somewhere, some kind of movement, some fighting. The only reason that we paid attention to the Ukraine was, well, not the only reason, but one of the key reasons was it was a country of white people, Christian white people in Europe. And they were attacked by what America likes to style its new enemy, or one of its new enemies, the Russian Federation under Putin. Now that's sort of just taking a back seat, that conflict. It's still happening, by the way. It's still happening. But it's completely lost its spot in the limelight ever since the war or the action in Gaza started.
Yeah.
So look, I have to say that this is an extraordinarily complex situation, and we simply cannot make statements around, oh yeah, well, this is because of that, or this is because of the other. In fact, you really have to go back in time to understand fully what is going on and the motivations of the people as well, right? Are the Palestinians? I mean, the Palestinians lost the war in 1945 or 1946 against the Israelis. They did. That's what happened. And the Israelis won. They had a lot of financial support from all over the world after World War II, etc., etc. And they won. They declared, well, we kicked out the British, right? We kicked out the French, the British in the end, and now we're kicking out the Palestinians, and this is now Israel. This is our country. Thank you very much. And that's kind of when that whole thing started there, right? And it hasn't stopped. If the Palestinians had won, then we might not have had all these issues. Possibly, I don't know. It's just really hard. It's just a hard. It's a hard thing to discuss without, emotional content, and it's an even harder thing to unpack. There is no right or wrong in this. Because after World War II and the Holocaust, who would deny Israel the right to exist? Of course, the Jewish people in the nation, right? or the majority Jewish nation. And here, I look at Jewish as ethnicity, not religion, which is another can of worms that you probably don't want to open. But I tell you what, that's an interesting map that you put in the chat there, my friend. What is?
Yeah, that's an Ice Age map.
That's right. I saw that. There's Sunderland is up north.
Yeah, that's right.
And then
you posted something very, very similar.
Yeah.
So
and then you've got the Zealand, right?
That's right. So you posted
almost
that
as big
one.
as Australia. Holy cow!
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, that's the one I posted.
Yeah, that's right.
So see, the thing is this: I've been looking. Sorry, one second.
So this is. I'm just doing this into the chat room, so everyone can see. That's.
Sorry about that.
You're right, man.
I've been looking at a good graphical representation of what the world looked like.
Yeah.
Pre the melting of the ice at the stage, right? And there aren't that many good ones around, I gotta say.
That's right.
Just not. Um, and I'll tell you what, I'll send you this one. This is the best one that I've seen, but it doesn't include Zealand. I don't know why, but it's odd. Here,
It doesn't.
look
Yeah.
bad. And it doesn't include. In fact, there are not very many that do, but I do believe that's. Is it a deliberate omission? I don't know, man.
See the one that I shared with you.
Yeah.
There's even another island south of Tassie.
Yes, that's right.
It's got Sunda up there on the left.
Yes.
No, okay. Let me have a look at this. So look, this is radio, right? So people aren't seeing what we're seeing.
No, sorry about that. That's right.
Yeah, you're right. It doesn't have that. It has an still underwater landmass there.
Yeah, so I'm thinking that this was even further back that was exposed. So and again, we don't know really. We don't really know exactly. We have some ideas, but the point here is, I think even the maps we're looking at aren't showing us everything. What it does show, however, is that the world looked somewhat different.
Mm-hmm.
There was a lot more land. That is no longer obviously land now, right? And it is also clear that we're looking in all the wrong places for civilizations, really, to be honest.
Yeah, that's right.
That's the that's the thing. And,
so something really interesting about Britain and Europe. So the channel didn't exist.
No.
And it was actually cut and carved by a glacier.
Yep.
And that's why, obviously it was, it had moved around it quite a bit because it's all, chalk.
Yeah.
So, and on both sides. It's really interesting. So totally interesting.
Oh, completely. In fact, the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
People believe that the Straits of Gibraltar were closed at some point.
Mm-hmm.
So it was an inland sea. But what people don't realize is the Mediterranean is an evaporation basin, meaning that more water evaporates than is added. Right. If you only have the rivers to contribute. I mean, they're pretty big rivers, don't get me wrong. But if the Straits of Gibraltar aren't open and it's not connected to the Atlantic Ocean, then the Mediterranean will evaporate significantly.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And it's quite possible that the Mediterranean was completely dry, some time ago. And all these flood myths. See, because the thing is this. We said this before. People would settle in areas that would be easy to settle, coastlines, river systems, etc. And then all of a sudden, like I said, there was the impact, the resulting nuclear winter, not really nuclear winter, but the same thing, and the resulting tectonic activity, volcanic activity, as well as the melting of the land ice, and the tsunamis, and the rain, the precipitation, because there would have been massive amounts of water would have evaporated.
Mm-hmm. Just like we saw when the Tonga volcano went off, we saw an amount of rain that we've never seen before going around the world.
Yes.
Yeah.
But, by the way, the map that you have showed me, and the map that I have here, has got the exact same outline of the... So if you look at
That's right.
Just look at my map, and you can see the shallower parts are the exact same outline as your map.
Totally.
Exactly the same.
That's right.
So there was a lot more land back then. I mean, a lot of it was under the ice sheet in the north. That's true enough. But around the equator and in the tropics, there was a lot more land available. And we are looking in all the wrong places for ancient civilizations, that is. In all the wrong places. It's laughable, in fact.
Yeah, so while, 300 feet or 100 meters down, there was, that's how much land was exposed. And I know I've said this before, I'm going to say it again. The rivers that we currently have we've scanned the ocean floor at the depth that I'm talking about when it was exposed to air, and the rivers have cut into those flat areas.
Mm-hmm.
We can see it. We can see that the river was there and went, along the place that's now, covered in water. But when it was dry, the river cut through it, which like rivers do. But the evidence is there to show that it was. That's where we should be looking.
That's right.
Along those riverbanks. But Becky, I think we lose a lot of paleontologists because they're just, I don't know if they use scuba gear or not, but it's very trying on them because they've got to, sweep a bit of, because how they paintbrushes, they have the paintbrush, paintbrush. Yeah, it's a bit muddy, and they can't stay down there very long.
Yeah.
Underwater. Right.
Yeah, that's the truth. That is true.
Anyway, it's a terrible gag. But yeah, so there was also, have you seen the Eye of the Sahara?
Yes.
If anyone's listening and you Google the Eye of the Sahara, you'll see the only rocky outcrop of its type in the world. And it has been suggested that it may very well be Atlantis. Because
that's what they say.
That's right.
That's
the description of getting there matches the location. So it appears as though when one of maybe the Scandinavian ice sheet or something like that, when it melted, maybe it caused a lot of runoff, just like the scablands, Becky, in the US, where it cut through the soil and it was very quick to make the scablands, in a week's time, right, from start to finish. Maybe the same thing happened there and wiped them out. This is the conversation that's currently going on by people that know what they're talking about. But I have to say, Becky, that it's raised a brand new point because we were looking at the Bimini Road or in off Australia, maybe the Zealandia was possibly the directions to get to Atlantis don't seem to fit any other location.
I agree, but I also believe that Atlantis, more than just referring to an island or even continental kingdom, was a civilization. So probably different but similar to the United States, for argument's sake, or maybe even as a better analogy, the British Empire. And I'm saying this because we see monolithic buildings, like the huge stone block buildings all around the world. Okay, so there was one prevalent one civilization at least that did this kind of stuff. Maybe there were trading posts, maybe there were colonies, maybe there were allies. I don't know, but we do have that. And I think at the same time, there would have been opposing nations, opposing powers, as we have read in the histories, right? That had a very different idea, maybe, of how to run the world or whatever, or had different kinds of architecture.
I've got a friend of mine, Becky, who's at Angkor Wat right now.
Oh, cool. Ask him to send us some pictures.
I have. I said, show me the Stegosaurus.
Yes. And to look for the two lotus or even the two elephant symbology around. Anyway, but the thing is that you can't ignore what our history is like and how we have developed. And And human nature being what it is, I would suggest something similar would have happened in the past, where it is not one homogeneous, civilization, and we remember some of the names, and maybe some of the names more than others. Like if there were cataclysm today, the question then becomes, what would we remember? I think we would remember China. I think we would remember the United States of America. We wouldn't call it that. We call it something else. Some corruption over time that would be sounding something slightly different. But it is without doubt that we would remember some of these civilizations, and people would then equate that with a place, which is not untrue, but it is more than a place. The United States of America is more than a place. The British Empire was more than a place. It was an idea, right? It was a construct that spread itself out over the whole globe, and that's really important to understand. These are not necessarily geographically limited places. The seat of power, just like Rome. Rome is a good example. Rome was a city, still is, and as a city, it expanded until it became an empire. It was the Roman Empire, but it was still a city. But the empire spanned a massive amount of the known world. Then, I would suggest that the British Empire is the same. I would also suggest that the Atlantean Empire might have been the same, with its seat of power, of course, in Atlantis or whatever it was called. It might very well have been at the eye of the Sahara. Very well, because it Plato does describe, or Solon, I should say, does describe it as concentric circles.
That's right.
That are surrounded by canals and shipping and so forth. In an ingenious way, if you think about it, they had ships, not motor cars, so they had waterways rather than roads.
Yeah. Because water is much more universal, can be used for more than one thing at a time.
Yeah.
So that kind of works. Angkor Wat, Mickey, I'm going to say, digging those huge square or oblong, trapezoid possibly, shapes into the ground for water storage and irrigation. They changed the landscape a lot, and it was only 700 years ago, was it, or more, that they were active in the region, which is something else. Now, we're getting some praise in the chat room, by the way.
Oh,
two favourite
active.
Deep
it's
philosophers, nice. Aussies from Australia.
Oh, that's nice.
Yeah.
That's nice. Thanks, guys.
So I'm just back to your point. Yeah, the British Empire, I get it. If Atlantis was an empire, then we might find more than one location. You're absolutely right. Yeah, I'm agreeing with you. That's very interesting. And
I think
the tools down event.
Yes.
Yes. And that lines up too.
Look, if we look at modern times, and we try to draw parallels, because that's really all we can do. We only know what we know. We don't know anymore for sure. We know what we know, and we look at empires that we do know, and we know their history, etc. Right? And you look at the Roman Empire, and what the Roman Empire left all over the world, or all over the world that they controlled? They left roads.
What have they
cobblestone
done for us
roads. Yeah. Really well constructed roads.
Yes.
They're still being used. I mean, and that's why we have to say all roads lead to Rome, right? Because at one point they actually did. All roads did lead to Rome. But the Roman army, the Roman Empire built roads. They were road builders. They were great engineers. And in a similar way, if you look at the monolithic constructions, so whoever these people were, they didn't build roads. They built massive, monolithic, huge stone structures. That's what they did. That's their thing, right? And what can we deduct from that? Well, looking at the roads, we know that the Romans wanted to connect the empire, to make military movements easier, to collect taxes easier, to make travel and trade easier. That's why they built the roads, to connect the empire, right? Now, what do monolithic structures tell us about that culture? Well, some things. Number one, it might have just been how they did things, right? But they probably were alone, and other cultures at the same time didn't build quite in the same way, potentially. And I think they built like this to show their power. Because there's no good reason why if you look at the Jupiter Temple, and this is one of my favorite places in the world, but if you look at the Jupiter Temple in Baalbek, there's no good reason why you would use 3 massive stone blocks like that in the platform. Not even at the bottom of the platform, mind you, okay, but in the middle of the platform. Mm-hmm. There's no good reason other than telling everybody, look what I can do. Look what I can do.
Yeah.
Right? And they did. That's so clearly, again, looking at human nature, we have to deduct certain things. What we also, I think, can deduce is that they didn't leave roads, or not many roads, not like the Romans did, right? And I think that's because they traveled by water. Wherever they went, in my opinion, they dug canals. And I say this because in Siberia, in Russia, they found these massive stone slabs. There was a whole series of articles in Next magazine on that. You can find it on the net if you guys want. But these stone slabs, they were sort of used in housing construction to, prop up houses, etc., etc. So people had just found them everywhere. And when someone looked at it, what they found is actually a map. These are massive. This is 2 by 2 meter blocks, and they haven't got the whole map, but it's essentially a representation of the area the map was found in. And what it did show, though, they could identify certain geographical features. That's what made them identify it was a map. But what they saw were massive channel systems crisscrossing Siberia. Massive. Rather than roads, there were channels. And the funny thing about
England
this rock is
has built all their canals.
Exactly.
Yes.
Exactly. In France, too. Because it's just easier to transport that way. You're 100% correct. And the funny thing with these stone maps is because you could, it's just a rock, who cares? No, it was worked, and then there was a glass layer on top of it to protect it, kind of thing. Like a crystalline glass layer that overlaid the map as a form of protection, potentially. So it was. We don't even know how they did it, but it was very. I mean, look, if you guys have the chance to look it up, look at I think type in Siberian stone maps Nexus magazine. It should get you something. I read this years ago in Nexus magazine, and it's just Siberian stone slab maps. Yeah, and don't forget, there's also the installation up in Siberia.
Yeah, that's right.
Right, which arguably might be protecting the planet.
Yep.
So again, what did these people do? And I'll do a bit more thinking on this, to be honest, because it just came to me, kind of thing. I think it's Dashka stone. But yeah, so it's certainly it's worth thinking about what motivates people and why certain things happened the way they did. I mean, within our history, we can understand it. The Roman Empire, they built roads to connect the empire, to make trade and all that easier. That's why they did it. Oh yeah, that's it. The controversial Dashka stone. This is a 120 million year old map. I'll post it in the chat so Great. You can make up your own mind. But Next magazine did run I think 4 or 5 part series on it. Very interesting stuff. Very interesting stuff. But yeah, man. Look, I don't know. I don't know. It's just it fascinates me. It really does.
What? Wow. That's really interesting.
Oh, well, it's different. It's different.
Oh, yes. It's pretty big.
That is a big stone, but it's only partial, right?
Yeah, right.
so that it's clearly part of a much larger map. But I think they only recovered this one stone, and it is in Nexus. I think it might be in Nexus 0602. If you guys,
okay.
Look, hang on, is it? Oh, I don't see. I probably have it at home. I gotta dig it up. Let's see. Keep these things forever. The Dashko stone.
You can't rely. Becky and I have learnt something. You can't rely at all on the internet still being there.
No. We have we have had because we source everything. Whenever we quote someone, we'll get to the website or the book or the page or whatever. It becomes part of the show notes. Over the last 12 years, going back to old shows, just because that's what we do. There is no some of these sites just don't exist anymore. It's gone. So I'm glad that we took it when we did, my friend. I'll be honest with you.
We do have the ability to use the Wayback Machine,
yes,
and get a fresh copy or whatever. Yeah. So if we just had a link for more information, we can get it and jump back, which is in some cases all we have left.
Yes.
It's funny how much has been deleted or cleansed. I don't know which way you'd like to go with that. I'll leave that up to you. And because of that, now we're just copying the whole page down. Pages, as much of the website as we can get.
Safer.
All the images. Yeah, it's nuts. Because, Mickey, back from, 96 when people started uploading everything they knew, I didn't think that it would disappear at one point.
Well, to be honest with you, I hoped it wouldn't, but I feared it might.
Mm-hmm.
Simply because I believe there have been attempts in the past at scrubbing history and certainly the internet, and that's what's happening. If you scrub it, you take stuff away. It never happened.
That's exactly right.
So,
just like from 9/11, all we remember of the Pentagon is seeing the collapsed building.
Yeah.
Try and find images now where there's just the hole and it's not on fire yet. Try and find those. Yeah. Try and find footage of when the trucks arrive with the dudes with the huge bags. Huge. Like, exercise bags, but 10 times bigger. More volume inside the bag than a person lying down. And they got out of their truck with these bags and walked into the thing, into the hole, and then started coming out with pieces of stuff without the bags. It was comical. I don't think we were supposed to see them walking in with the bags and then coming out without them. I just didn't think we were supposed to see it, but there it was. And all the light posts were intact in the path of the plane. Anyway, things. My daughter, Meki, I know we only got 1 minute left, but my daughter said, "How do conspiracy theories start?" There's a conversation for another day.
Huh. Yeah. They usually started by, seven old men in a room trying to rule the world.
The 9 unknown men. Meki, there's less than a minute.
Oh, good Lord. Time flies. Of course it does.
Mm-hmm.
Look, thank you so much for listening, all. I don't... That really hit me. That was quick. You have been listening to Platos Cave. Thank you so much for allowing us into your homes. Really, really enjoy the time we spent with you and some really great conversations in the chat. Thank you, everybody, for contributing. It's really awesome. Now, don't go anywhere. Something will surely come up after us, so just don't touch that dial. But most of all, be safe.